let's get this workshop started.
Welcome, dear people, to dear person slash people. I don't know if you're attending this to the Intro to Effects workshop. That says November 11th. That's when I made the slides, I think. All right, so let's just jump into it. So, what are effects? Effects are plugins that take our sound, process the sound in some special way, and then output the new sound. So TLDR, they create new sound out of the sound that it receives. Effects go into your mixer. They run in sequential order. We're gonna see that later. And then we'll also see later the term wet and dry, and wet means on and dry means off. So there are different classifications of effects. Of course, like many things that are classified, that are put into classes, there are always going to be overlaps. So the different types of effects are modulation, time, spectral, dynamic, and hashtag filters. So modulations are effects that change sound by varying certain parameters over time. So these are your plugins like phasers, flangers, and chorus. Time-based effects are effects that change how a sound is played over time. These are going to be your convolvers, your reverb, your delays. They all belong to the same family. Spectral effects change the space of a sound. Now this is plugins that affect like panning, stereo versus mono, and other things like that. There are even plugins that give you like 3D audio, so like you have this notion of front and back, not just left and right. And then there's also dynamic effects, which change the dynamics of a sound. These are going to be your compressors, your distortions, your limiters. And then filters are effects that change what goes through in a sound, that being your EQ. So you have different kinds of filters, your band pass, high pass, low pass, and this thing called band reject, or band stop. And we'll go over all these types today. So first, we'll go over modulation effects. So let's hop on to FL Studio. And we will go check out, where is 3x oscillator? Make sure keyboard playing is on. All right, so that's regular sine wave. So let's put an effect on it. So if you're not familiar, this is a mixer track. In Reaper, this would be like the stuff down below, and you would add your effects to there. Let's see here. Let's put a, where is it? There it is. Let's put a flanger. So this is a flanger. As you can see, these are like the different parameters of the flanger, and these are the things that are being modulated. You can also see a wet and dry knob. That's just how much of the effect, how much of the raw signal you're getting. So how much of, how much of this signal you're getting over. Let's turn this like all the way down, and this all the way up. So it's just comparing that signal to the signal. So let's set this to default. Reset. All right, so what is a flanger. Well, these modulation effects are somewhat similar to each other. At least they sound similar. Where can I get my... Hello. This will show, Wave Candy will show us what's actually going on visually. Favorite preset. All right. So let's get this over here. Oh, I need to resize this. Nope. This is really frustrating. There we go. Okay, so let's turn off the flanger. So right now, this is what our sine wave sounds like with the flanger. So you see some cuts are being made. It's not just a straight. It's not just a straight sine wave. If we add some more detunes and offset, we can see that it it adds. Oh well, let's do so you can see this kind of shape right here. That's from the modulation of a filter that it goes through. So flanger usually has smaller waves compared to phaser, which is a lot bigger for interesting effects. So what these actually do is, if I replace it with an I needed EQ2, not EQ1, EQ2. So it's doing something along the lines of this kind of filter. Not that one. So it's doing something along the lines of that, and it's moving all of those along the band. So it's moving them along like this, which is causing that effect. Another modulation effect is chorus. If you can see, it's even smaller. You can see like tiny cuts, and it kind of gives it a vibrato, and it also multiplies the sound. Okay. So now that we've looked at that, we're going to look at time-based effects. So time-based effects are your reverbs. So I'm pretty sure everyone here is familiar with reverbs, but just in case you weren't, it just plays the sound back on a slight delay. You can turn up the wet knob to get more of that reverberant signal. In this type of reverb is called a room reverb, so you can change the size of the room. Make it sound bigger. You can also change how long it plays. So that's reverb. You can also achieve a similar effect with delay. If you set the time super low, it won't play as long. It plays the exact same sound back, so it doesn't do any like processing of like the attack or anything, but it controls how sound is played back over time. Could be ping pong, which is a different increase the feedback. Yeah, so that's delay. You can get like super whack with that. You can even turn down the dry to get less of the actual sound, but more of the delay itself. Okay, now there's convolver. So convolver is the kind of, it's an interesting thing. So most reverbs that you encounter are called digital reverbs, and they're based on an algorithm. Convolvers are usually based on having an impulse, and based on that impulse, it does some stuff. It processes the actual sound based on the impulse you give it. So right now it sounds like that. And if we turn up the wave, as you can see, it kind of shares the same signature as the impulse. There's a bunch of presets for Fruity Convolver. It's great. My favorite one is this. I like it. So that's all the time-based plugins. Do you have any questions so far? Cool. Okay. So now let's move on to spectral effects. So spectral effects include EQ, panning/auto panning plugins, and stereo shaper/enhancer type plugins. So it's not on this computer, but there's a plugin called Ozone Imager. It's free. It's really good. It's another type of this spectral plugin. It does like stereo enhancement, so it makes your stuff sound wider, and you can control how wide you want it and how narrow you want it. Now, what does wide and narrow mean? So if we go to where is the stereo enhancer? So we can increase the stereo separation. Can't really hear it here. Probably want a different sound. Or the speakers are not ready for this. But I would recommend you try it on your own machines. So stereo enhancer makes, well, if you can also achieve this by doing that. It's that versus that. It's really hard to hear in these speakers. I wish these speakers would be better. I can show you guys later on like my laptop. But just trust me that it changes how wide and narrow the sound is. Shaper changes can change either left or right. It's a version of a panning, and then so this is the idea of having something in the back, having something like right up in front, in the left, and in the right. So you can really play with that. There's even certain plugins that actually like do auto panning, meaning it'll like automate that for you, and it will do that based on an LFO, which is basically like it's just gonna turn on and off in like a slower frequency wave. That's why it's called a low frequency oscillator. That's what LFO stands for. So yeah, that's. Oh, I forgot to show EQ, but if I'm going to show EQ, I'd rather do that in the filter section. So we're going to move on to dynamic effects. So dynamic effects are your compressors. So don't mind me here. Limiter can also act as a compressor. This is better used with something like a something like cool. So what a compressor lets you do is lets you get a certain get a sound and like bring it down closer to the rest of like bring it down closer to a certain threshold you want, and later you can bring it up. That's useful when you're like mixing like drums, or when you want just like loudness. Yes.
What's that on top of that wavelength?
This one?
Yeah.
That's showing what it's cutting, how much it's actually cutting.
Okay.
Yeah. So this way you know, like, okay, so it's not running the compression, it's running the compression, kind of thing. So that's compression. In a way, that's also limiting. Limiting is just you have a ceiling, and your sound will only go up until that ceiling. That's useful in mastering, because sometimes you don't want your music to reach a certain decibel level. Well, actually, not sometimes. You always want to make sure your music can only reach a certain decibel level. Usually, what I do is negative 1.5 to negative 3, depending on the kind of track that you have. So next one would be distortion. I like using Wave Shaper because Wave Shaper is whack. You can like do some really wacky stuff with Wave Shaper, but you can see that how it's like changing the quality of the sound. Interesting. You can see how it changes the quality of sound. Maybe if I like go. So that's a kind of distortion. There's also like this overdrive plugin. So like without this, this is more easily seen in something like an oscillator. So if we like turn up maybe we do like drive. So as you can see, it changes the quality of the sound as well in the dynamics. So that's your dynamic effects. Now we have filters. So filters are usually achieved with your EQ plugin. So that's what our sound currently is. But we can have our first type of filter, well, as you can see here, there's different kinds already available to you. So this is a low pass, meaning we only let the frequencies lower than this determined frequency pass. There's also a high pass. It's the opposite. And then there is a different one called band pass. So it's kind of like it brackets things together. You could even change the order, which means you change the slope. So now it's a sharper slope. And you can see, hey, look, does that kind of look, do those kind of spikes look familiar? It's like the ones from the phaser and flanger. Okay, yeah, so at least it's like from the phaser was a little bit more like that. All right, so then there's this other interesting one called bandstop. And it's like not bandpass. So it takes out everything in a certain range. So something interesting. I haven't really found a use for it quite yet, but it's a thing. So yeah, that's pretty much the effects from top to bottom. Does everyone have any questions?
Can you have like a high pass and a low pass in the same like thing?
Yes, but guess what that kind of makes? Kind of makes a band pass. Just a wider band pass, right? But you can, on most cases, on my mastering chain, I actually have a low pass. Usually, when I master things, are you familiar with mastering at all? Okay, so basically, mastering is just stuff that you put on after you're done with your song, just to give your song just a little bit more boost in maybe like volume and maybe some like stereo quality and things like that. Just like tiny little changes. But usually, I cut 25 hertz and below. So I do a high pass. So I cut out 25 hertz and below. So why 25 hertz? Because the human ear can only hear up to 24.
So like, why bother at that point, right?
Exactly. So that'll also save you in like some like data in your track, and also it'll save some decibels because that's taking up room in your track. Even though you physically can't hear it,
It's just taking up space.
It's just taking up space. Yeah. So you just chop it off 25, and then and then for the higher end, for low passing on the higher end, I kind of just do it by feel. I try not to lose too much of the high end, but I'm looking to take out like the really like tinny like high frequency kind of sounds. So yeah, that's pretty much my advice for high pass and low pass.
And that's for like the whole song. It's like the master.
Yes,
That's
it's
what
like the
called
master.
mastering.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because it's on the master chain.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. After this, I'll show you the mastering that I did for one of the songs that I made. Do you have a question, Lyndon?
No,
Okay, cool. All right. Simple workshop.
that's it.
Thanks everyone for coming.